Story 1. Christmas lights under my skin. I did not notice when the first light appeared beneath my skin. The apartment was dark except for the Christmas tree in the corner, blinking softly in the silence. I had strung those lights up 3 days ago, untangling the wires with half-frozen fingers, cursing at the cheap plastic that scratched my hands. At some point, I must have cut myself, but I never found the wound. That night, lying in bed, I saw it, a tiny red glow under the skin of my forearm. At first, I thought it was an afterimage from the tree, burned into my vision, but when I blinked, the glow stayed. It pulsed slowly, in time with my heartbeat, like a buried ember. I pressed my fingers against it. The skin was warm and tender. The light dimmed for a moment, then came back stronger, like it was reacting to my touch. The next evening, there was another one, this time green just under my collarbone. I only saw it in the bathroom mirror when I turned off the lights. A faint dot, then a clearer glow, as if my body was becoming transparent around it. I leaned close to the mirror and watched it flicker. It followed no pattern I could recognize, but it was not random. It felt intentional. The tree in the living room kept blinking in its own cycle, but I began to notice something unsettling. When I walked past it, the lights on the branches would sync up with the lights beneath my skin. Red under my arm, red on the tree. Green near my collarbone, green near the top branch. They pulsed together like two parts of the same circuit. By Christmas Eve, I had counted 6 of them. They traced a path. Forearm, collarbone, ribs, hip, thigh, ankle. Like someone was drawing a line through me. I stopped turning on the main light in the living room. I sat there in the dark instead, staring at the tree and the dim shapes of presents beneath it, feeling the faint, warm throb of the hidden bulbs inside my body. I hadn't invited anyone over. I had not celebrated Christmas properly for years. There were no presents with my name on them. I had wrapped empty boxes for appearances, for the ritual of it. I told myself it was just a sad joke. At 11:47 p.m., all the lights in the apartment went out. The heater died with a soft sigh. The refrigerator stopped its constant hum. The tree went dark. For a few seconds, I sat in complete blackness, unable to see my own hands, my own breath in the cold air. Then I saw myself. Red, green, and faint blue points of light flared under my skin, brighter than before, outlining the shapes of veins, bones, and joints. I could see the rough pattern of my hands, the curve of my arms, the shape of my legs, all mapped out in trembling color. The tree remained dark. I realized, with a quiet, growing horror, that I could see the room now only because I was lighting it. I stood up, shaking, and walked to the window. In the reflection of the glass, I was nothing but a silhouette of lights, a human shape drawn with colors. The face was the worst part. Points of white light clustered where my eyes should be, and a jagged row of tiny red bulbs marked my teeth beneath the skin. Outside, the building across from mine was completely dark.
No windows glowed, no street lamps burned.
The entire city seemed to have disappeared into a power outage. But in almost every window, I saw something. Faint moving patterns of light in the shapes of people. We stood there in our own apartments, glowing from the inside, all of us quiet and still, like ornaments hung in a vast, invisible tree. The power never came back on in my building that night. The official notice, sent hours later, said there had been a localized grid failure and that repair crews were working on it. When I checked my body in the mirror the next day, the lights were dimmer, almost gone, like dying embers. But every time I go near the tree, they wake up. Somewhere under my skin, the wiring is still there. Story 2. I heard carols through the walls. I moved into this old house on December 23rd, which should have been a warning by itself. No one else wanted it, not in this season, not in this part of town. The landlord said I was lucky to get it so cheap. The neighbors said nothing at all. They only watched as I carried my boxes inside, their faces unreadable in the cold. The house had that particular December smell. Dust, dry wood, and a faint hint of cold air that never really left, no matter how high I turned the heat. There was a fireplace that no longer worked and a narrow staircase that groaned with every step. In the living room, someone had left an artificial Christmas tree in a box in the corner, like an unwanted guest. I told myself I would ignore it. No tree, no decorations, no songs. Just a quiet, lonely Christmas, the kind I had grown used to. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiators tick. It was just past midnight when I heard the first note. A single, clear musical tone, muffled, like it was coming from another room. I thought it was a phone notification or some neighbor's TV, but then another note followed, and another, slowly forming a tune I recognized instantly. A Christmas carol. The sound was not coming from outside. It came through the wall behind my head, directly from the narrow gap between my bedroom and the dark, unused attic space. Soft, layered voices hummed together, just slightly out of sync, the way old recordings sometimes warp. I told myself it was a radio, some forgotten device left up there, coming to life after years of silence. That explanation was just good enough to keep me still. I stayed in bed, heart racing, and listened as the carol wound its way through the house. It did not change songs. It was the same melody, looping again and again. The lyrics were the ones everyone knows, but the words were wrong in places, like someone had learned them phonetically and never quite got them right. Certain syllables came out stretched, others cut short, but the tune never broke. Around the third or fourth repetition, I noticed the pattern. Every time the song reached the final line, the one wishing peace and comfort to everyone listening, the voices stopped for a fraction of a second. Not long enough to be silence, not long enough to be a pause. Just a tiny, collective breath. And in that breath, I heard something else. A scraping sound, right behind my headboard, as if someone inside the wall had shifted, turning to face me. The carol would begin again. The humming grew a little louder with each loop, creeping deeper into the house, slipping down the staircase, through the pipes, into the floorboards. I could feel it in my chest, like a second heartbeat trying to match my own. I did not sleep. By morning, there was no music. The house was quiet and ordinary again. I avoided the attic. I avoided the wall. I told myself I had been half dreaming, that exhaustion had turned wind or plumbing into phantom carols. The second night, the song started at 11:37 p.m. This time, it came from more than one place. I heard it through the wall, yes, but also faintly through the floor and behind the bathroom mirror and inside the vent above the kitchen stove. The house vibrated with the same off-key cheer, wrapping itself around me like an unwelcome blanket. I walked from room to room, holding my breath. Every time I pressed my ear to a surface, the voices seemed closer, sharper, more human. They never changed songs. They never stopped. Somewhere around the 8th repetition, I realized the lyrics had shifted more. There were no familiar holiday wishes now. The words had become a string of broken phrases, fragments of sentences spoken too fast to catch, in voices that sometimes rose in a pleading tone and then dropped into a low, resigned hum. They did not sound like people enjoying a song. They sounded like people reciting something they could not escape. Tonight is Christmas Eve. The landlord's only warning, back when I signed the lease, was a single sentence delivered with a forced smile. If you hear anything strange, just remember this house is old. Now, as darkness settles and the temperature drops, I can already feel the vibrations in the walls. The carol is waiting at the edge of my hearing, ready to begin again, ready to seep into my bones. I have locked the doors. I have turned off every light. It will not matter. The song does not come from outside. It comes from underneath the plaster, from behind the wiring, from within the beams. It has been here far longer than me. I am just the newest listener. And from the way the voices rise at the end of the final line, stretching that last note just a little too long, I think they are hoping I will finally sing along. Story 3. The extra gift with my name. My family has never been religious, but Christmas was always sacred in its own way. Not because of faith, but because of routine. Same food, same music, same old, battered ornaments carried from apartment to apartment through decades. This year was the first time I spent it alone. They moved abroad in October. I stayed behind, half out of stubbornness and half out of fear of starting over somewhere else. They sent a box of presents early in December and made me promise not to open anything until Christmas morning. I stacked the wrapped shapes carefully under my small artificial tree and tried not to think about how quiet the apartment felt. On Christmas Eve, snow fell in thick, slow flakes outside. I turned on the tree lights, set my phone aside, and watched the colors reflect off the wrapping paper. I counted 3 presents with my name written in my mother's handwriting. Only 3. I went to bed early, more out of boredom than anything else. At 3:08 a.m., I woke up with the absolute certainty that I was not alone. No sound had woken me. The apartment was still, but something about the air had changed. It felt heavier, denser, as if I had slept through some silent event and was only feeling the echo of it now. My first thought was that I had forgotten to lock the door. I padded down the hall, heart beating too loudly, every shadow looking thicker than it should. The lock was engaged. The chain was in place. The peephole showed only the dimly lit hallway. On my way back to the bedroom, I glanced at the tree. There were 4 presents with my name on them now. The new one was obvious. The others were wrapped in familiar paper, patterns I recognized from years past: gold stars, red snowflakes, little green trees. The 4th gift sat right in front, wrapped in plain, matte white paper, utterly smooth, without any folds or tape marks visible. My name was written on a small tag, in handwriting that almost looked like my mother's, but not quite. The letters were just slightly too tall, the curves too tight, like someone had copied her style from memory and gotten it mostly right. I did not touch it. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until the faint light of morning crept into the room. At 7 a.m., I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe I had miscounted. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe I had wrapped something and forgotten about it. Rational explanations lined up neatly in my mind, one after another, waiting to be believed. I sat in front of the tree and opened the gifts in the order I knew they were sent. A sweater, a book, a small box of my favorite candy, the brand I could never find here. They smelled faintly like my parents' house, like the particular detergent my mother always used. That left the 4th gift. The white wrapping paper was cold to the touch, colder than the room. My fingers hesitated against it. The tag with my name felt like cardstock but left no indentation when I pressed my nail into it. There were no seams.
No tape.
The paper did not tear when I tried to pick at a corner. It only stretched slightly and returned to its original shape. The only way to open it, I realized, was to pull. I gripped the ends and tugged. The paper did not split. It slid away, soundlessly, collapsing into itself like deflating skin, revealing a small, simple box inside. Unmarked, unpainted, the kind you might find at any craft store, except the wood was entirely smooth, without grain or texture, almost like plastic pretending to be wood. The lid lifted without resistance. Inside, nested in black, velvet-like material, was a single object, an ornament. A small glass sphere, pale and slightly cloudy, with a thin silver hook. It was unremarkable at first glance, the kind of thing that would disappear among brighter, more elaborate decorations. But when I held it up to the tree lights, I saw that there was something inside of it. Not glitter, not paint, something that moved. Tiny shapes floated in the glass, like flakes in a snow globe, except they did not settle when I stopped moving. They drifted with their own slow, deliberate purpose, forming and reforming patterns I almost recognized. Streets, buildings, windows, the layout of my own apartment, seen from above, in miniature. Near the center of the sphere, there was a small, clear hollow. As I watched, that hollow shifted, aligning itself with my face, until I realized what I was looking at. A tiny, transparent room that matched my living room perfectly, complete with the couch, the TV, the bookshelf, and the little artificial tree. In that miniature tree, there were 4 presents under the branches. One of them moved. I jerked my hand, but the ornament did not slip. The tiny scene inside continued, unaffected by my fear. I brought it closer to my eyes, squinting. The small present with my name on it, the one in the miniature version of this room, was slowly opening itself. The white paper peeled back, folding neatly away, revealing a smaller box, and inside that box, an even smaller sphere of glass. I did not want to see what was in that one. I did not want to know how far the pattern went down. The ornament grew heavier in my hand. For a moment, I felt something pulling at me, a gentle pressure in my chest, as if a hook had caught on a piece of my reflection and was tugging it inward, trying to drag some essential part of me into that tiny, nested room. I hung the ornament on the tree. The pull lessened but never fully disappeared. It sits there now, swaying gently between the branches, the almost invisible shapes inside it never truly still. Every so often, I catch the faintest glimmer of movement at its center. Something opening, something stepping through. My parents wrote this morning to ask if I got all three of my gifts. They listed them one by one: the sweater, the book, the candy. They did not mention a fourth.